gonna choose my life.
Hi there, how's it going? I'm Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain. And in case you don't know where you are, you have found yourself at Drag and Spirituality with a special series that I'm super excited about. It's called Idaho Drag Is Divine. And so this is the second interview of about 7 or 8 because the cast is building. So be sure to check out the links in the description to see who's up next. Most every like Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, and now Friday for the next 2 or 3 weeks has a guest. All the guests are someone who are currently living in Idaho or maybe once did. And so I'm super excited about like the diversity within the group and just, yeah, I am, as you can see, I'm super excited. And I'm really excited about our guest today, Miss Cali Je, who is in Pocatello. I'm going to bring her on in a second. Yeah, I think I'm just going to do that. Let's go ahead and get this thing going. So our guest today is Miss Cali Je. I said that right?
No.
No, darn it. I felt like
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I told myself to ask you first, and
No,
then I
it's
didn't.
fine. It's Miss Cali Je. And
Cali
instead of giving you
Je.
the long backstory, I'm just gonna remind you. It's G, like Jesus.
Oh, is
that's
it
how I put
like
it.
Jesus?
It wasn't originally. It was
Oh.
actually just a G. It was actually just a G. And then
Okay.
they spelled my name wrong at the Idaho State Journal, yada yada. But yeah.
Oh, I got you. Well, we got off to a great start, right? It's always the worst to say somebody's name wrong, so I do apologize for that. Do you want to go ahead and just give like a little brief intro to yourself?
Yeah, I'm Miss Cali Je. I live here in Pocatello, Idaho. I have since 2013. Oh goodness, that's 10 years. 2013. I started going to college here, and I left. I had like a brief mistake in Oregon that I hold dear to my heart, and then I came back. And yes, I've been part of the local community here. I am the president of Reading Time with the Queens, which is an organization that reads children's books to kids and families, with an emphasis in teaching us all how to love and accept ourselves and others. And I also am a member of Trinity Episcopal, which is just across from Pocatello High.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Thanks for helping us get going. And for folks who are listening to us or watching us, feel free to engage if you're doing it during our live airing. We'd love to hear from you if you have questions or comments, if you want to tell us we're beautiful, whatever it is you want to do, feel free to do that in the comments. If you get not cute, we'll get not cute back, but not really. We'll just ignore you. But that's not a challenge. Anywho. Let's go ahead and just get right in there. I often say I'm not good with foreplay. So let's talk about your childhood.
Let's unpack.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about just kind of what your experience was with spirituality, like kind of what you were taught as a young person?
Yeah. I grew up in the Treasure Valley, so Meridian, and then Nampa. I went to school in Nampa. I grew up Baptist, so I went to a church in Meridian, and it was a very evangelical church. So that's kind of how I developed my Christianity. And it was very much like praying the believer's prayer is how you like start your journey, and I did that very young. And being a queer person, it was really difficult to progress through my childhood in that sect of Christianity, as it is for many people who just aren't accepted in their home churches. So as I grew up, I found it really difficult to be there. I got really interested in musical theater. I found out, like, I developed the language of, understanding queer identity. And so once I realized that was me, I hid it away from myself immediately. And I just started kind of searching. I started going to a Nazarene church for a little bit because there was a girl there that I thought was really cute. Turns out I just really wanted to be her. And
there's a story there, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then, hi, Darren. I I just was kind of falling out of Christianity for a little bit. The first thing I wanted to do when I went to college was find queer people so that I could, relate to them and explore more of myself and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a Presbyterian church, but it wasn't until I was invited to be a part of the church choir at Trinity Episcopal by my good friend Trent that I found my church home.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really able to explore my identity as a Christian and a gay person. So that's a brief overview.
Yeah. So did they speak about LGBTQ folks when you were growing up, or was it just like for me, it was just never talked about?
Right.
So it was like,
I think they probably did in hushed tones. It's certainly not now where it seems like it's very brazen, right?
Yeah.
That's like a platform.
It's on the agenda. Yeah. We're like, we're going to talk about this today. Yeah.
It seemed to be, I didn't really understand what being gay was until I was a teenager and I was forced to like grapple with the world as it was. And yeah, but the thing is like, because there is no way to understand that and no one's having conversations about it.
Yeah.
The homophobia is certainly still there. A lot of it's implicit, and some of it was explicit. I remember kind of like one of the last tries at me being a teenager at my Baptist church. I was at a youth group, and I was also in Cats at the time. And they they said, anytime you get the moment, you can do these stretches so you can get better at ballet. And I was a teenager and I had certainly not done any ballet and I wasn't that good at it. So I was just like, no one's talking to me. I'm going to go off in the corner and like do these stretches up against the wall or whatever. And oh my goodness, childhood friends I'd had since my family moved to Meridian when I was like 2 let themselves feel like they could tell me who I was at that moment. So that was a really hard time for me because, I had a church family, I thought, and I found that was, that disappeared really quickly the moment I started to show any kind of queerness.
Yeah. And so church was something that you had enjoyed?
Oh yeah. I loved going to Awana on Wednesdays. The only reason I stopped doing Awana is because they asked me to be in the church play.
And what's Awana? I'm sorry.
I can't remember what it's called. So it's just basically just like the weekly kids
youth
program.
Group? Oh, okay.
So they would have like a game time, and then there was a time where you learned and studied and recited scripture, and then they would have like a lesson. So it was and snacks, goldfish, things like that.
Awesome. So so it sounded like I guess when were you first exposed to drag?
That's a good question. Probably Mrs. Doubtfire, it's one of those like acceptable kinds of drag that is part of a lot of young people's existence because it's not really seen as like a problem when Robin Williams is doing it.
Right.
And other things like, like the church lady on SNL, because my parents would let us watch SNL. But I didn't really understand that drag was an art form in and of itself until I was in college and I had friends that were showing me RuPaul's Drag Race, which had been on for a couple of years at that point.
And so did you have like a response when you first saw drag as in like, that's something I want to do? Or were you kind of like...
Yes, absolutely. I really glommed onto that. I did do a drag role when I was in high school. I played... someone had dropped out of the cast of Into the Woods and it was a girl. And the way that like my junior year went, like I restarted high school my junior year. So they had already cast the plays at the high school for the whole year. So when there was a role for playing Jack's mother, I was like, I would love to play that role. And that was so much fun for me. But I remember like really fighting against like the type of femininity they wanted me to do. I remember the director, who was my friend, was like, you need to get like really big boobs. Like you're going to play like a boisterous old woman. And I was like, but what if I want to be pretty?
Right.
So I had done drag up until before then, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand how integral it was to the queer community until I saw RuPaul's Drag Race and the Charlie's Angels came to Idaho State University to do a show. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Charlie's Angels is a drag troupe, right? In
yeah, they're the drag troupe. Well, not the only now, but at the time they were like the drag troupe
the
of
drag troupe,
Club
yeah.
Charlie's in Pocatello.
So you were saying, so in high school you were doing drag?
I did drag once for a role, and I feel like my family was like, "What's going on here?" But like, my mom knew that I loved Into the Woods. I remember
Mm-hmm.
watching it together with her. We ended up being, when my music theater had done a production of it a couple years prior, we ended up being stagehands. So she knew like that was like a thing, and I'm sure she'd heard me like quoting the lines of this character a lot. So
Yeah.
I felt like this was my time, you know, to
Mm-hmm.
show who I was through this character. And I didn't really want to do like a mean portrayal of her. I just really wanted to do I just wanted to do comedy through that gendered performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how would you how would you compare it to the way your drag is today?
It's a good question. I think I still kind of tend towards the comedic side. I certainly like outfits that are a lot more colorful, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, a lot of the drag that I end up doing is for reading time. I think that I try way harder on a reading time outfit than I do for anything at like a bar
Mm-hmm.
show. um, and I think a lot of it is just theatrical, right? A lot of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I'm doing, I'm a singer, so I do a lot of singing at the club, and that's not something that every drag performer does. So
Yeah.
it's
Mm-hmm.
unique in a lot of spaces. Um, and like last night, I was doing a number that I with a friend of mine, Ophelia, and I described it. I was like, okay, let's go and do a piece of theater, because it wasn't just like going out. Not that there's anything wrong with this, of course,
Right,
because
right.
but like going out and doing a lip sync number. We were lip syncing, but we were telling a story about two people that were getting together and exploring their queerness for the first time. So that was,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that I've held true to that.
Well, and was that at a bar?
Yeah, I was at Club
Yeah.
Charlie's.
Okay, cool. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things I love about having these conversations too, because I think when people maybe only see RuPaul's Drag Race, they only have like a one idea of maybe what it would mean to do drag.
Right.
So you're talking about what kind of story were you trying to convey? What was the
So have you heard this? Do you know Chapel Roan?
I don't.
Okay, she's a wonderful newer artist, I believe.
Mhm.
She has quite a few singles out, and this one song, "Naked in Manhattan," is about having like a crush and just coming into uh, your queerness as like a young lesbian. And
Mhm.
so that's what we were doing, like this scene where we're sitting there like watching ostensibly like Mean Girls or something, like something that we really like, and then you know end up getting to know each other a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah. When did you get into reading time? Like what drew you to that?
Right. So reading time was actually a project so I had run for a pageant called Southeast Idaho Gay Pride Pageant. And I had won the youth title because I was 20 at the time.
Yeah.
And I had done it with my friend Zaornia, and also Marina Zirconia. They
Great
have
names.
all, yeah, there are good. Yeah, Zaornia Nagahide, Marina Zirconia, and me, Miss Cali Je. And we were getting towards the end of our reign, and I just was really like, we felt really strongly about the idea of a pageant title holder ensuring that they're doing something to give back to the community. And this,
Mm-hmm.
at the time that we had started, which was 2017, gosh, things are going by quickly.
Right.
2017, the drag story hour was really coming into its own. So
Mm-hmm.
you know, as an English major, I saw that as something that we could do. Like, I can do family friendly drag, I can do reading to children, and I can pick up my ukulele and sing a couple songs. And we really have done that. Zay is deaf, and so we incorporated some deaf culture by teaching the kids some sign language, and
Mm-hmm.
since then, I had moved away and then come back. And the first thing that people started asking me was like, are you going to start doing reading time again? And so we started a nonprofit, and it just kept going. But we've done it really consistently since 2019. So
Yeah, I was real impressed. I watched a recent one that you did, which was a little bit different than I think your normal experience, but I was really impressed with just yeah, like you played music and you sang and you had ASL and you taught people, too. And I just thought it was really great. I enjoyed
thank you.
it.
Right. And I think we had just created it because it was the type of thing that we probably needed when we would have liked to have
Yeah.
when we were young, right? I didn't have, like I've mentioned before, the vocabulary to explain my queerness, and I didn't understand what was going on with me at the time. But I think that if I had been able to go to a program where I was able to just see a queer person living a happy, healthy life, I would have felt way more comfortable, trying to figure out who I was. And that might not even, obviously I'm a queer person, but that's probably doesn't need to be the story for every single kid or every family member that comes. It just might be the permission to be yourself.
Right.
Well, it is.
Well, and I think people often want to sexualize our community. It's like we're only known by our sexuality. And it's like to actually see people who are queer in non-sexual environments like church, like the library, like wherever. I think all that does is kind of allow people to see that you can exist. Yes, people have sexuality, but also there's more to a person, and there's more to a person than their sexuality,
Right. I think that that's important to know, because everybody has asexuality, even if it's the absence of one. And for me, my queerness really lately has just been more about community and culture and understanding who I am in relation to the world. And it's really less about sex or who I love. And I want people to see that part of us. I want people to see that we have vibrant communities, and that we hold events for each other, and we try to uplift each other, and we explore our gender, we explore our faith, we explore lots of different facets of ourselves just by being together and bonding under this LGBT umbrella that we've been under for decades.
So how is it that you identify? It sounds like you identify as queer. Are there any other labels you would place on yourself at this time of your life?
I would just say that I'm from day to day, I'm a gay non-binary person. And from day to day, I always say, like, if I get like a name tag, I always put he, they, she, which I think is a little jarring for some people at first, because it's just not something you see a lot. But I always put contextual next to it, because I want people to remember that there's certain times where you can use certain pronouns with me, and certain times that you shouldn't. Right? When I'm at work, he and they is way more appropriate than she. But when I'm in drag, if you call me he, I'm gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
So but I don't really identify with maleness or being a man. So why I like the pronoun he, that's not something that is tied to any kind of overt singular masculinity, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It makes total sense to me. I think there might be some folks who who don't quite understand that, but I totally get what you're saying. How would you say that drag relates to you were talking a little bit more around gender. How would you say it impacts your gender, if at all?
I think drag's really afforded me the ability to explore that part of myself. I'm way less concerned about seeming feminine from day to day, which is so liberating. I just remember growing up and having your gender policed all the time, wearing certain things. And hi, Haley. Wearing certain things, and or like not wearing certain things, or like portraying yourself, how you stand, how you put your shoulders back. And I think when I get in drag, I feel wonderful and pretty, but it's not something I want to do on the daily.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I feel comfortable being in all the time. Last month, I knew that we were going to get a lot of attention for reading time. I didn't know what kind of attention, but in January, I had actually planned on not being in the reading time program. But after we had, some things had happened locally, and I felt like I needed to be there. And I ended up like being in the program eventually. But it was like a thing like last minute, the night before, I was like, I need to be in drag at this event. It's going to be weird if I'm not. It's part of my armor. It's part of, it helps me feel more powerful in a way that just being normal me, whatever that is, just doesn't, right? It's like armor is what I kept saying.
Yeah. I can relate to that as well. How, I guess I'm gonna jump to spirituality a little bit.
Let's do, yeah.
Where does spirituality land with your drag? Did they ever feel like they couldn't exist together, even in like your, I guess, a nowness?
I think that there's certainly a period where, hi Colin. It's just all my friends sending me hearts. Isn't this so nice?
Good. That's good.
There was certainly a period of time in my life where I felt like my queerness and my Christianity did not mesh, or I was trying to figure out how to get them to mesh. And that's been a journey in and of itself. For my drag, I think that I've been very privileged in being afforded, since I've started doing drag pretty seriously, the ability to not have to hide that part of myself. I'm very grateful to be part of a church community that knows I've done drag, that I do drag. I've been very privileged to be part of a Christian community that embraces it. When I lived in Corvallis, my priest was like, you should like, we should do programs for the kids here at the church. And the church board let us use a room there for a reading time once for a fundraiser. In 2020, February 2020, we had gotten also a lot of attention for reading time. And a moment that I will hold dear for my entire life is the priest came up or had me come back from the choir loft and blessed my work and the work of our program, up there in front of the altar. And it's what a difference from being scared to be who you are in the church that you grew up in to finding a community that is not going to bat an eye or turn you away, and in fact embraces and blesses the work that you're trying to do to make the world a better place.
Yeah. Well, it's so powerful and healing to be able to kind of like be back, like to be able to come as you are now, especially as someone who thought to be or was told that you weren't eligible or worthy or even had God in you anymore, to be able to exist in how you are now and loved in ways that you were before. It's just, it's one of the most healing things I've ever experienced.
I cried hard tears of joy.
I can imagine. So I know we've kind of alluded a little bit to things, and I know oftentimes I don't want to like derail too much, but I know Protect Drag in Idaho is something you're very passionate about, and you're one of the main leaders from my perspective on the campaign. And I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about why that's important to you.
Yeah. Well, I think I've seen like firsthand this last weekend what that really looks like in action. Just to give a little bit of background to anybody who doesn't know, in October, a fairly new lobbying group in Idaho called the Idaho Family Policy Center, which is a conservative Christian lobbying group with a anti-LGBT bent. They announced that they would be working to introduce legislation that bans drag in public in Idaho, What that actually will look like, we don't know. There's been a lot of these types of bills across the country at this point. They also said that they would be introducing it in the first days of the legislative session, and that has not happened. It is most of the way through February, so I don't know if they know exactly what they are talking about, but I think that's par for the course. I've just been it's something that weighs close to my heart, right? Because the type of thing that they are trying to go after is reading time and pride, things that I have and do feel are very important for our community, right? I of course I'm biased as the president of Reading Time, but for Pride, I remember the first Pride I went to was in Idaho Falls in September, I believe. As a college student, and it was just so healing to be out in public in a public park. I know that it doesn't seem like much now for many like seasoned queer people, if you'll allow the term, but like for a young college student, freshman, that was really important to me. And I think that they know that. I think that people who don't want drag in public know how powerful this art form is for queer people. It's how we fundraise. It's how we come together as a community. It's how we, relate to each other, explore ourselves, learn to accept ourselves, and have fun. and that's the type of thing that they want to take away. And they mask it as some kind of like protect the children type of agenda. And I just don't buy it. I've seen how they actually act towards children this last weekend. And I think there was a time when I felt that our dissenters really were concerned about the children. And I was able to connect with them on that because I am concerned about the children too. Like I've said already, we're trying to create spaces that we knew that would have helped us when we were younger. But more and more, I just feel like it's part of a larger historical pattern of using the children as an excuse, children, our children, as if, like every child is their child, to hate on queer people, to hate on Black people, to restrict women. And I'm hoping that, so when that started, I was trying to think of ways that we could like fight it, and just getting people together so that we could figure it out. Activism is not something that I have had a lot of experience with in the past. So it's really, really new territory for me. And I almost feel guilty that a ban on drag is the thing that's gotten me off my seat and into the proverbial streets. But I've been really blown away by how much everybody's come together and work together to do things like create postcards and send them to our legislators, or write letters on the protecting drag issue, and also ensuring that trans kids can get the health care that they need, that they're able to use the bathroom at school, that they can access stories about themselves in libraries and schools. Like, these are all very important things, and it's all part of the same agenda to really take away their ability to see themselves and to discover who they are as they grow up through those really pivotal times. I've totally lost the plot. I've just been talking.
No, you're totally okay.
The question was,
no, I was just asking why protect drag in Idaho, and you're just
I think it's fun. I think drag's fun.
One of the things that I was impressed by is recently the folks decided to do like a sit-in and take all this space so the kids couldn't be there to hear the stories or whatever. And my first response was kind of like, okay, when are we going to go sit in their church, and take up space in their church? And I really liked your response about just like, well, and because I feel the same way. Oftentimes we want to fight fire with fire, or that sort of thing. And I never really saw myself as that person, but I definitely, when I saw what happened with your event and what was going on, like that's what I wanted to do, and I was impressed with your thoughts. So what's your response to how people are coming? Like, guess what's your response to that?
Yeah, what did I say to you? I said,
Yeah,
I said first, I don't want to put my community in harm's way like that,
yep,
right? Which I think is really important. But also, I think that Jesus warns against this eye for an eye kind of reaction. That's like a gut reaction. You hear the phrase "turn the other cheek" a lot. I don't think that gets portrayed in the correct way. I felt like it's very much like if someone strikes me on one cheek, it's almost like oh, do you want to try that again?
right.
Here you go. Did that make you feel good? Do you think it's going to keep making you feel good? You don't actually want them to let you strike you on the other cheek, right? But calling them out for what they've done is certainly appropriate. Doing the same thing to them, I don't believe so. And I believe in the Baptist ability to congregate. I believe in their right to have their own space. And I just am asking that they respect our right as well. So,
yeah. Oh,
but
bravo.
Sorry, and I'm not saying this just because I think that's a normal reaction. I think a lot of people have said the same thing, and I've been in a Baptist church. I grew up in one. I don't want you to go there. That's not fun.
Yeah.
That's a fun time for you. That's not going to be healing. That's just going to make you more angry and sad. So, on a larger note, I've just been really trying to think about, especially with stuff with reading time, how we're going to protect kids. I'm truly worried about it. I don't want kids to be in the middle of some kind of fight between adults. And I don't think that it's their job to pay for our sins and our inability to get along. So, exactly how we're going to move forward with that, I don't have an answer for that at the moment, but we're searching for one. And I think right now, really the important thing is to, ask our leaders to uplift the queer community and, remember that all of us have the right to exist in public, even queer people. Hi, Chris. Amen.
Right. Yes. And for folks who are listening, I want to invite you again. We have about 10 minutes or so left of the conversation. So if you have a question you've always wanted to ask Miss Cali or or whatever, feel free to do it now.
Yes, I've been very nervous about what I was going to say today. So I'd love to know what you want to know.
Right. Well, and I think it's interesting how you still it's such an interesting time, I think, in Idaho in particular, and with everything that's going on. And I know as somebody who didn't live in Idaho and now living back in Idaho, it's definitely a little there's so much progress and there is so much great community to like you were talking about to there was chosen family, and we really are. It's just a beautiful, rich community. It's great that because I don't know, just getting embraced with that. Sorry, I'm rambling now.
No, I completely agree. I think I've been very impressed and happy by how the community has come together. And I think it's really interesting because I can't sit back and say I can never say that the people who sat in on reading time last Saturday didn't win, because they accomplished their goal, which was to make sure that children weren't able to attend our event. Right. However, if they think that they've discouraged us, they're sorely wrong. Queer people are much more resilient than that. And I've really seen, and our allies are much more resilient than that too. And I'm very, very impressed with my community in the aftermath.
Yeah, indeed. And we do have a question from the peanut gallery. Is that a negative term? That wasn't meant to be negative term, but we do have a question from the audience. Kelly says, what has been one of your favorite or most joyful moments from reading time?
Oh dear, that's such a hard question. Actually, I take it back. I don't want to know what anyone wants to think. What has been a joyful moment? In lieu of thinking of a specific time, I think I'll just say I'm continually blessed and honored again to have a community, but especially a board of directors that believes in our mission so much that they continue to listen to my ramblings every month during a board meeting and continue putting on amazing programming and getting better every single time. I'm so happy to have, friends and allies that are dedicated to that work. It's joyful for me when, especially like even people outside of our organization, they understand the importance of the work, and they give us funds to do amazing crafts at Pride and things like that, and make sure that we're comfortable and that we're always supported. That brings me life. That's very happy. That's a happy time for me, because I'm able to remember that the work that we're doing is important. It's important to a lot of people. It's much bigger than me. It's much bigger than our board. It's a community effort.
Yeah. And what would you say what's your like dreams for Cali Je? Like, where would you like to see? Is there a stage you want to see yourself on? Is there a thing you see yourself wanting to do at some point in time? What are your hopes?
I don't know. I'm trying to make it through the next day, Bonnie. Every
That's
day is
real. That's real.
Yeah, isn't it? I'm trying to survive right now. I think when I was young, I really wanted to be an actor. I think I'm not given up on that dream, but I have shifted it. And I would love to just put on programs and shows and do cabarets and concerts that are, speaking from like my artistic view. I've always wanted to do, like, for instance, a concert of just Mr. Rogers music. I find a lot of joy in Mr. Rogers. I bring a lot of Mr. Rogers to reading time. But also, he was a Presbyterian minister. Presbyterian, yes. And I read quotes from him all the time, and I think that's the energy that we need kind of in the world right now is love your neighbor type that Mr. Rogers brings. So yes. So okay, so a specific thing, an action item. I want to do a Mr. Rogers concert. Yeah, I think it'd be fun.
That'd be awesome. That sounds really great. We do have a comment. Rowan, who I want to say thank you for helping moderate for us this evening, ask, as so many people continue to use Christianity, the Bible, etc., to hurt and harm people, I'd love to know who your role models are as a queer person of faith, other than Jesus, obviously.
The big JC is really up there for me. I think that's true. I can only aspire to live by Jesus's teachings, and I think that we all should. I just mentioned Mr. Rogers. I think that's a big person, big one. I try to really emulate. I had a priest in Corvallis. His name was Father Simon. And I was just really impressed by how he was very resolute in his beliefs and his view of Christianity, and even at the not the behest. What's the word I'm looking for? You knew that there were people in the congregation that disagreed with the things he was saying from time to time, and I found that exciting. I found it exciting to have a faith leader who was, challenging our preconceived notions, or maybe the things that we had grown up with as Christians, and forcing us to look at it a different way or be better, and expand our understanding of who is our sibling in Christ and things like that. Of course, I also really look up to the priests at my church, Father Don, Diane. We don't really call her Mother Diane, Reverend Diane, and Reverend Haiti. They're people that I look up to, and I ask for spiritual guidance from time to time, and they don't always have the answers. And I think that's also really good. I think that's also really good because they're able to help us talk through things, and they have a knowledge that I just don't. But that's refreshing, being somebody who grew up in a church where, what the pastor said is correct.
Right.
And there's no questioning that. And whatever our faith leaders understanding of what the Bible, what Jesus is saying to us is correct. And there's no questioning that.
Mm-hmm.
And where are you supposed to find yourself in that if I'm not allowed to study or talk with people and be wrong from time to time or not know the answer? And I think it's way more healthy. And I'm so honored to have people like that in charge of my church and leading all of our spirituality.
Yeah. There's a question, but I wanted to go to this one first. What does your spiritual practice look like now? Like what things do you do in your practice?
Yeah. I want to answer what I used to do, but I'm just not going to. I think a lot, I find myself, so I'm still part of the church choir ever since was asked. And I'll take some breaks from here to and there, but I really enjoy just going to choir practice. I know it probably is annoying to some of the choir members, but we take that time a lot to just chat and talk and catch each other up. And I find that very spiritual, and it really helps build a community. Going to church on Sunday and being part of the choir, but also, doing ministries within the church, just trying to contribute and make sure that people know that we're here. As far as I feel like a normal answer to this question might be, maybe not normal, but a standard one would be right. A standard one would be oh yes, I pray here and every night, or I read my Bible. I've really moved away from that kind of that practice, because I get really tired of when people work really hard to memorize Bible verses out of context, or pray in public. And I just feel like it's very much just it should be a private thing. What I've really realized in my adulthood is that sometimes I know that I've been spoken to by God, here in my heart. Yeah. by sitting, kneeling, or just being in my car and driving and talking. I think that that's a perfectly valid spiritual experience. But I think a lot of the time, the way that God talks to me is through people I know, and people that I respect, and people that are my friends. That, and especially people who are on the walk with me, knowing that God put us here on earth to be in community with each other. So why would God not speak to us through those people as well?
Yeah.
So that's a lot. And just trying to remember that the actions that I do from day to day really do affect people. Trying to remember that the work that I'm doing is supposed to be furthering God's kingdom here on earth, and ensuring that everybody has a place at the table and is loved is a lifelong journey. And I certainly don't think that it's a thing that we can do, any one of us, but knowing that I have a community that is striving for that is very spiritual. And that's the type of spirituality I practice right now.
For sure. And it sounds like it bleeds out into the rest of your life as well, which is fantastic. Not just when you're in the church building or with church people. It sounds like it's happening in reading time, and when you're at Charlie's performing, it's something that I'm sure goes with you everywhere. Angela has a question. Ideally, what does reading time look like in a year?
That's a wonderful question. These are things I should ask myself actually more often.
It's recorded, so you can look back to it.
Right now, my goal is in existence. That's what I want reading time to look like. But when we're at our board meetings, we talk and we say, what did we do good, and what could we improve upon? And I think that that's really helped, because I see us really trying to be mindful of the things that we're saying, the books that we're sharing, and having a conversation about how the material comments on itself. What are we trying to teach the kids today? It's more than just about our next program is going to be about sewing. It's more than about sewing, or it's more than under the sea. We're learning about friends. We're learning about persevering, things like that. So I think just strengthening that commitment to messaging is one thing. I would hazard to say any additional programs. Right now we do 2 a month on the same Saturday. So it's a lot of early mornings into the afternoon.
Yes.
And I don't want to put more work on our board members because that's a lot. But I think even throughout the pandemic, we've been fine-tuning this program, and I think it just needs some more fine-tuning. What I'd love to do, I've written a lot of songs for Reading Time, and I'd love to finish an album of those songs so that
that'd be
other
fun.
drag story hours and other programs like ours can use that music during their program.
So if there are any producers in the audience, huh? Anybody who comes across here. Yeah, I mean that's all fantastic. And I had a comment. And how can folks support you or support Reading Time?
Me, I should say, I just want to give a big shout out. I did not ask for donations after this last weekend, but people have found it upon themselves to do it anyways. Reading Time does not cost that much to put on. I should say that,
it's time and energy, girl.
It's a lot of time and energy.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that we spend money on are like craft supplies and advertising materials like posters. And that gets really spendy, of course, during like Pride season and things like that. And I like to buy, gifts for the kids, seasonal things during like Valentine's and Halloween and Christmas and things like that. But if you do give funds to Reading Time, just know that they're not going towards costumes. I pay for that myself. It's not even going towards books. Like I buy the books, they're my books. I have a children's library downstairs. And the money is going towards the cost of operating. I'd love to see us get really better at representing deaf culture. I think that we've kind of come to a reckoning in our organization about how we've been going about that. I think that that's on the docket, is making sure that we're, being able to pay for things like interpreters. That'd be really great to be able to do long term. And how can people support me? I would just say, there's nothing that I can say that I need except for my community to be thriving. So, let your local library, wherever you are, let your local libraries know that you support them. Let your state officials know that you want free speech to be upheld, that you want specifically queer people to live comfortable lives in your state and in your nation. And I think that'll help me a great deal.
Definitely. And we are pretty much out of the time. There is one more question that I don't know if you can see it. Is that something you want to respond to right now, or?
Yes, I'll respond to it.
Okay. So Teresa says, can Reading Time in Pokey, that's short for Pocatello for folks who might not be from around there, in Pokey be moved to a private business or home so that further problems can be avoided?
The answer to this question is, of course. We already do our Idaho Falls program at a wonderful bookstore called Winnie and Moe's, for whom I have only respect. Right now, I think that while it's certainly not outside the realm of possibility, the concern of the community is for making sure that the legitimacy and the integrity of the library is upheld. So I am always thinking about kids first. And I think that it is highly possible that if we did move to a private place, that it would be a move that we were making out of, how do I want to say this? We would have to move not because we were running from the library, but because we were running to a bigger, more bright program. So I would say just, keep tuned in and just know that we're always thinking about maintaining the safety of our community first.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Thank you for that question, Teresa. I know that's on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, definitely. And then Angela has I think a comment. I'll go ahead and share that. Angela says, you can write kind words to RT. I'm not sure.
Reading Time, yeah.
Reading Time. And you can speak gently to family that might have the wrong idea about the program. Awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot of emotional labor that is difficult for me to be doing. But if people feel like taking that on. Of course, that's wonderful work. Kind, respectful conversations with people that are close to you is really important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well said. Well, we are all out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go that maybe you didn't get a chance to speak to, or you just want to put out into the world?
I think I said everything that I want to say. I hope that I don't regret saying that I've said everything that I want to say. But, if you want to go, if you do want to see programs, maybe you don't have children, and so it wouldn't be appropriate for you to see programs. You can go to YouTube, type in Reading Time with the Queens. You can see a large catalog of programs that we put on over the years, so you can learn more about our program that way.
Awesome. Great. And for folks who are coming across this at another time, you can look in the links in the description and reach out to Miss Cali or learn about Reading Time as well. Also, I wanted to invite you, Miss Cali Je, if you're available, to come to the Dragon Spirituality Summit. Basically, I host a summit every year where drag artists get together and do spiritual stuff. And so it's for drag artists as well as like other spiritual leaders, for us to share our spiritual experiences, to learn from others, and maybe even to have spiritual providers learn from us on how they can best serve us in their, I don't know, their spaces, whatever
Right.
those look like, So awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. I think I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye.
Thank
Take
you.
care, and if folks want to join me tomorrow, I'm going to be meeting with Miss Jasmine J from Coeur d'Alene. Again, the link is below. Thanks so much. Take care, Miss Cali Je.
Thank you so much, Bonnie.